Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. In a stunning new article that was published by the Washington Post, there is new proof of the massive disparity in the economic recovery. Not only is this a K-shaped recovery, not only are individuals at the top of the K doing much better than individuals at the bottom of the K, there are actual racial considerations and gender considerations. But you probably knew that. Did you also know that there are also age specific considerations? Individuals who are much younger and individuals who are in their late 50s and early 60s have been impacted more by the pandemic and are essentially suffering from higher unemployment rates. Did you also know that there is a direct link between an individual's education level and an individual's employment recovery as a direct result of this pandemic? What this pandemic has done is it has taken fundamental underlying inequalities in age, in race, in gender, as well as in education level, and it has significantly expanded them. It has significantly magnified them. And that is what makes this economic recovery stunning and in many ways unfair. In this video, I'm going to give you all the data, all the facts. All I ask of you is you please click the like button, please subscribe, please enable notifications if you learn something new from this video. Me and my team work very hard behind the scenes to bring you all the latest news, all the latest information pertaining to the country, pertaining to the economy, and pertaining to your money. In fact, for individuals making more than $20 an hour, specifically individuals in the top quartile making more than $30 an hour, jobs actually grew in 2020. But for individuals making less than $14 an hour, the number of jobs actually declined. Think about this. Individuals who are low wage earners not only lost their jobs at higher rates, but they are also suffering higher unemployment rates for longer periods of time. So they not only lost more jobs, they're also finding it harder to get back to their pre-pandemic levels of employment. On the other hand, individuals making more than $30 an hour did not lose as many jobs, and those who did lose jobs have gotten their jobs back, and for them life is almost back to normal. This is the definition of a K-shaped recovery. Individuals at the top of the K doing much better than individuals at the bottom of the K. Let's take a look at this article on your screen, some phenomenal reporting from the New York Times a year later. Who is back to work and who is not? We have a year's worth of data to analyze, and so we can now see the trends that are emerging from this pandemic. Women have been impacted more than men. African American women and Hispanic women have been impacted more than any other demographic. Let's take a look at some charts. Let's take a look at this chart on your screen, which shows you the percentage decline in employment from prior to the pandemic. As you'll see, Hispanic women fell into the deepest hole. In other words, they lost the most amount of jobs. They went from 12.4 million workers in February 2020 prior to the pandemic. That was the last month of job gains before this entire pandemic hit us. And they went down to 9.4 million jobs in April, which was a 24% drop. Now, if you look at this closely, you'll see that on the left side, you'll see that that magenta color, if you will, represents the decline in employment, and the peak job loss that you can see in April all the way to the left side of your screen represents the number of Hispanic women who lost their jobs. Let's take a look at African American women, Asian women, and white women. Across the board, you can see women lost more jobs than men, and you can clearly see that essentially when we're talking about men, Hispanic men, African American men, and Asian men lost more jobs than white men. You can see it on the chart on your screen. Now let's take a look at another chart that shows you the share of the working age population who are employed. Now, the right side of this image, the section in gray, represents the impact of the pandemic. And on the left side, you will essentially see how we were prior to the pandemic. The top of the chart represents men, the bottom of the chart represents women. Now, when you look at this, at first glance, you might be like, well, you know, those who are Hispanic in the magenta color, those who are Asian in the light blue color, and white individuals represented in the orange color. Essentially, if you look at it, you might say, oh, you know, Hispanic and Asian individuals are doing better than white individuals. But here's the interesting thing. Look at the substantial decline. Compare the left with the right and ask yourself, has the right side gotten back to the left side? If you take a close look at the orange section, you'll see that it's come back to normal more relatively to the magenta and relative to the blue sections. So you can start to see that proportionately more individuals of certain races, of certain ethnicities lost their jobs, and they haven't come back to normal relative to other ethnicities if you take a closer look at this chart. And this applies to both men as well as women. In fact, let's focus specifically on black women. Let's focus specifically on the bottom right-hand section of this chart. And you'll see that black women proportionately lost their jobs more so than any other demographic. And even as of right now, at the time I'm recording this video, they haven't been able to get their jobs back at the same rate as other demographics, regardless of race and gender. Also, workers who were older or younger suffered disproportionately more job losses. Let's take a look at this chart, which shows you the percentage decrease in employment from before the pandemic. Now, the light green section represents how bad things actually got. In other words, it represents the peak levels of unemployment at the peak of the pandemic. Fortunately, it's not that bad right now, but the bold green sections, the darker green sections represent where things are right now at the time I'm recording this video in March 2021. So a year later, you can see that individuals who were in their early 20s who suffered a significant amount of job losses, presumably because many of the younger individuals were working in travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality that required in-person face-to-face interactions. A lot of these individuals lost their jobs, but they haven't come back to where they needed to be. Now let's take a look at older individuals. We have a bigger problem with older individuals who are 65 and above. Not only was there a big impact, but they're nowhere close to where they were prior to the pandemic in terms of employment levels. Now, if you look at the middle section right here, you'll see number one, the light green sections aren't as bad. In other words, the job losses during the peak of the pandemic were not as bad, and now they're slowly starting to come back to where they were prior to the pandemic. If you're in all those age groups in the middle, from your mid-20s all the way to your late 50s, early 60s, you're doing just fine. But if you're on the younger side of the spectrum or the older side of the spectrum, you have suffered more because you've had more job losses and you haven't been able to get your jobs back relative to all the other age groups that are represented in this chart. So you're probably wondering, okay, so this, I get it. This has to do with race. This has to do with gender. This has to do with age. But guess what? There are more factors. There's another factor, education. Depending on your education level, you either did just fine or you suffered more than anyone else. Let's show you this chart on your screen, the percentage decrease in employment from before the pandemic. If you did not have a high school diploma, the peak job loss was significantly more, and right now you still haven't gotten back to where you were, where you want to be. So data as of last month indicates that the proportional job loss for individuals without a high school diploma is still high. The unemployment rate is still high. But if you have a bachelor's degree or higher, you can see that, you take a look at the light green section on the right side of your screen. You will see that if you had a bachelor's degree or higher, number one, the light green section wasn't as bad. In other words, you didn't have a significant amount of job losses in that particular education level at the peak of the pandemic. And now, if you look at that green dot right there, things are back to normal. In fact, a lot of these individuals are doing just fine, probably better than they were prior to the pandemic, because their home values went up and the value of their stock portfolios also went up. And finally, and this is probably the most shocking part of this video, let's show you this chart on your screen. Low wage jobs disappeared in 2020 and high wage jobs actually grew. This is just incredible. This represents the change in jobs from 2019 to 2020. And what this tells us is that the bottom percentile, let's take a look at the left side of this image, individuals making under $13.67 an hour, let's just round it off and say under $14 an hour. These individuals, the number of jobs for these individuals fell by 8 million in 2020 relative to 2019. And now let's take a look at the top quartile on the right side of this chart. You'll see individuals making more than $31.40 an hour. The number of jobs in the top quartile rose by almost 1 million in 2020. In other words, individuals making more money essentially had more jobs, and individuals who were low wage earners, again, presumably with lower education levels, working in travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality, saw their jobs in many cases vanish completely, vanish permanently. That's it, everyone. This is stunning proof of the uneven nature, the uneven K-shaped economic recovery that we are seeing happening. These are underlying unfair trends that have been under the surface for many, many, many years, and now they are simply being exposed. They're simply being exaggerated as a direct result of the pandemic. Thank you so much for watching. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. I would really appreciate that. I have magical powers. I have a crystal ball. I can predict the future. Check that out. It's an imaginary crystal ball. And I can make it rain money. Check that out. The reason I say that is I want to make it rain money for you. But seriously, I would like you to please click like, subscribe, enable notifications. I'll give you important information pertaining to the country, pertaining to the economy, and pertaining to your money. And I want to help you get to the next level. My advice to you is improve your skill level. Learn more, improve your education level. You don't necessarily have to go to school. You can learn on YouTube, you can get books, you can go to the library. Improve your skill level so that you can start a new business, so you can achieve maximum work productivity, so you're not stuck in a job that you don't want to do, because that is the way forward. That is what the data shows, and I will do my absolute best to empower you to get there. And that is what this channel is about. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.